Hello from Halifax. This is Jo with Jo to the World Creations, and today we're going to be making my chunky scarf crochet pattern. This is a very easy crochet scarf pattern, which is perfect for beginners learning how to crochet a scarf or even crochet in general. This would be a great first project. And in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to crochet this chunky scarf. The pattern creates a scarf that is approximately 6.5 inches wide and 77 inches long. As seen in the pictures, I used one skein of Burnett velvet in the color smoky blue. This yarn is size 5, which is bulky, and 100% polyester. You can substitute with any similar size 5 yarn, and you'll need approximately 285 yards. I recommend using a hook that is size K or 6.5 millimeters. All the details for this pattern can be found for free on my website, or you can purchase the print-ready PDF of this pattern, and there are links to both in the description below this video. All right, let's get started. So as we get started, I'm going to be using my K hook, and just for this tutorial, I wanted to use a yarn that is a little easier to see. So just for this video, I'm going to be using Red Heart Soft Essentials, and this is a size 5 yarn. So the very first thing we are going to do is make a slip knot. So with our yarn, I've got one end here, we're going to twist it and make a loop, and you can hold the loop just like this. I've got one strand behind the other. I've got my loop. Now I'm going to take the end, and you can see how much yarn I have left. I leave quite a bit of yarn to weave in at the ends. I'm going to take this strand here and pull it through the loop, and then with my hand on the end attached to the skein, pull tight, just like that. And then using the end, I can then tighten up the loop like that. So that is our slip knot. Once again, in case you're brand new at this, we're going to take our yarn, twist it, pull the end through the loop, and pull tight. Then I can adjust the end using the tail here. And then as soon as I have my loop, I'm going to be inserting it onto my hook like this. Then I'm going to pull it tight, and we are ready to start. This scarf is worked from the chain row up. So the number of starting chains is going to determine the overall length of the scarf, and the number of rows is going to determine its width or its height here. So however long you want to make your scarf is going to be determined by your number of starting chains. For the length that I made, which is approximately 77 inches long without these tassels, I've chained 178. So if you want to make a scarf that is approximately 77 inches long, chain 178. But if you would like to adjust the size, you're welcome to do so. Just ensure that you chain any number that's in multiples of 2 plus 2. So now we are going to start making those starting chains. And as I mentioned, we're going to start by chaining 178 for a scarf that's approximately 77 inches long. So to make our starting chains, we just yarn over and pull the yarn through, and that creates one starting chain. Yarn over, pull the yarn through, that creates 2 starting chains. And you're just going to do this a total of 178 times. For this video, I'm only going to be making a little swatch, so I'm not going to be making the full scarf. I'm just going to teach you the essentials of how to make this. But you go ahead and chain 178 and come back to the video and we'll start row 1 together. With our chains now made, we are going to start row 1. Row 1 is a right side row, meaning that the front of our work is facing us. On row 2, we'll be turning it over and working along the wrong side. So for row 1, the first thing we're going to do is work in the second chain from the hook. So what this means is here's the hook right here with our loop on the hook. The first chain from the hook is this one right here, the very first one. So that means we want to work into the second chain here. Into this second chain, we're going to single crochet. So we're going to insert our hook into the chain. For this, we're going to just be working under the top loop of the chain. So you'll see that you have 2 kind of strands along the bottom. So we're right under that top loop, we're going to insert our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull our yarn through the top of the chain. Now we're going to yarn over again and pull our yarn through both of our loops on our hook. And that's created our first single crochet stitch. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a double crochet stitch into the very same chain. So to make a double crochet stitch, and again we're working under that same loop that we just made our single crochet into, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the same space, same chain, yarn over and pull through a loop. So we are going to have 3 loops on our hook. Now we're going to yarn over again and pull that yarn through just 2 loops on our hook. So now we have our 2 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over one more time and pull our yarn through those 2 loops. And now we have a single crochet and a double crochet that's been completed in the same chain. We are going to be skipping the next chain. So this is the chain we just worked into. Right here is the chain we're going to skip. So we're not going to work in that one. We're going to work into the following chain. And we're going to do the exact same thing we just did. Into the following chain, we are going to single crochet and double crochet into that same chain. So we're going to insert a hook just like we did before, right under that top loop, yarn over, pull through a loop. We've got 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull that yarn through both loops, and that's our single crochet stitch complete. Now we're going to do a double crochet stitch in the same chain. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the same chain, yarn over, pull through a loop. We've got 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull that yarn through just 2 loops on our hook. So we've got 2 left, and the last step, yarn over and pull that yarn through both remaining loops. And we've just completed our single crochet and double crochet into the same chain. We are going to continue doing this all the way across. We are going to skip the next chain. In the following chain, single crochet and double crochet. Skip the next chain. In the next chain, single crochet and double crochet. So you go ahead and repeat those steps, skip the next chain, single crochet, double crochet into the following chain, and come back to the video and we will do the end of the row together. So as I'm nearing the end of the row, I'm still following my pattern. So I'm going to skip the next chain, single and double into the same chain, skip the next chain, in the next chain, single crochet and double crochet. Now, as the pattern says, we have to work a single crochet, double crochet into one chain, skip the next, single crochet, double crochet, skip the next. So you should have 2 chains left. The first one is the one that we're supposed to skip, because we always skip a chain after completing the single and double in the same one. So we now have 1 chain left. In this last chain, we are going to make 1 single crochet stitch, and that's it. So skip the next chain, into the last stitch, 1 single crochet stitch. And that completes row 1. If you want, you can go back and count your stitches to make sure that you have the right number of stitches. So what you do is count. I like to count the tops. I find that's easier. So you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, and you would just count the tops of the stitches all the way across. But for this pattern, the chains, remember how we skipped a chain at the very beginning? We crocheted in the second chain from hook. So just note that we never count chains in this pattern. You're only going to count stitches, and that's going to be easier to understand in the next row. But as you go along, count your stitches. If you made 178 starting chains, you should have 177 stitches completed at the end of row 1. Now let's start row 2. Starting at exactly the place where we finished row 1, we are going to chain 1, and chaining 1 is just like our starting chains. I'm yarning over and pulling through a loop, just like that. Chaining 1, and now we're going to turn. And remember how I was talking about right side and wrong side rows? Well, this is now a wrong side row. We're looking at it at the back of our work. And this is just important when we go to put the tassels on, so that you know that you want to put the tassels on with the right side of your work facing towards you. So row 2 is a wrong side row. And so every time you change rows, it's going to switch. So row 3, for example, will be a right side. Row 4 will be a wrong side. Okay, so for row 2, what we're going to do, now that we've chained 1 and turned, we're going to be working in the very first stitch. This is the stitch that's attached to the chain that we just made, that chain 1. Into this very first stitch, we are going to make a single crochet and a double crochet stitch into that first stitch. So in this very first stitch, single crochet, and in the very same stitch, double crochet. So now I have a single crochet and a double crochet stitch completed. Now we're going to skip the next stitch. We are not going to work in the very next stitch. In the following stitch, we're going to repeat the same thing. We are going to single crochet and double crochet into the same stitch. If you pull your work apart a little bit, you're going to be able to see exactly where you need to work. It's right under these 2 loops here. And it is a small stitch, so it can be tight, but we're still going to work into it. So into that stitch, we are going to single crochet and double crochet. And we're going to repeat this all the way across the row. We are going to skip the next stitch. In the next stitch, single crochet and double crochet. Skip the next stitch. So all the way across, single crochet, double crochet, skip the next stitch. Single crochet, double crochet, skip the next stitch. And now, and it's going to get even easier as you move along in the pattern, but can you see that the stitch that we're skipping is quite larger than the smaller stitch that we're working into? And the reason is because this larger stitch is a double crochet stitch. It's the top of the double crochet stitch from the previous row. And then we're always working in to the top of the single crochet from the previous row. So it's really easy to know where you are because you're always going to be working into that smaller stitch. So we skip the next stitch and then single crochet and double crochet. So you go ahead and do this all the way across and we will finish row 2 together. So I've just completed a single crochet, double crochet in the same stitch. I'm going to skip the next stitch, and this is going to be my last time that I do a single crochet and a double crochet in the same stitch. Now, as the pattern says, every time we do that, we have to skip the next stitch, so that's included here. And so we have 2 stitches left. This last stitch is a little hard to see. It's a little smaller and you may think that's a chain, but this is in fact your last stitch. So as we follow the pattern, we skip the next stitch, but into this very last stitch, which can be a little smaller, Charlie's saying hello, we're going to single crochet into that last stitch. Just make 1 single crochet stitch into that last stitch. And that completes row 2. If you want to go back and count your stitches, if you chained 178 at the start, you will have 177 stitches in this row. It's the exact same number of stitches in every row throughout the rest of the pattern. So you'll want to just count the tops of the stitches all the way across. And do you see this little bump here? This is the chain 1 that we made at the very beginning of the row, and this does not count as a stitch. So you're going to want to count just the stitches to make sure that you have 177 of them. For row 3 and on, we are going to be repeating everything we just did in row 2. So for each row throughout the rest of the pattern, you're going to do the exact same thing that we just did. But as a quick summary, at the start of every row, we chain 1 and turn, working into the very first stitch, we single crochet and double crochet into the first stitch. We skip the next stitch. In the following stitch, single and double. And we do this all the way across. So single crochet, double crochet, skip. Single crochet, double crochet, skip. All the way across. Your last stitch that you make your single and double into afterward is this one here. It's the third stitch from the last is the last one. You'll do a single crochet, double crochet stitch in, and then you skip the next stitch, and the very last stitch you single crochet into. So you are going to be repeating row 2 over and over and over again until your work measures approximately 6.5 inches. But you can make more or less rows if you want your scarf to be a little thicker or thinner. You can end after almost any row. I'd love for you to end after a wrong side row, which means to end on a row that's an even number. Because remember, we flip every time. So just make sure to end on a wrong side row, because that helps with the tassels, the tassel placements. So you continue doing that and come back to the video and we will finish the pattern together. So I'm going to pretend this is the width of the scarf that I would like. I have ended, or I've just finished a wrong side row. So this is a great place to end. And so all we need to do now, whenever you're ready to finish off, we remove our hook. I just like to pull a big loop here. And we take our scissors and we're going to leave, I leave pretty large tails, to be honest. I like a good 10-inch tail just to give me lots of wiggle room to weave in my ends. So let's say it's approximately this long. And I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to pull the end through my loop. And this is how you fasten off. And then you pull it tight. And that fastens off your project. Now we're going to weave in all our loose ends. So you're going to take a yarn needle and put your yarn through the needle, and taking your needle, weaving your yarn behind the stitches to hide the end in your work. And there's lots of tutorials on this out there, but I just want to show you what I do. Is I just try to go right behind stitches. I have no scientific method of how I'm doing this. I'm just trying to find places where you're not going to be able to see the ends. So you see here, it's going to be very hard to see where these ends are going. And I find it very important to be pulling your work like this as you're weaving in your ends, so that it becomes very natural where these ends are hidden. So as soon as you've really secured the ends and also found that they're quite hidden, just do one more here. You then take your scissors and cut them. And there you've got an end that is pretty much hidden. So you do the same with the other end, and then come back to the video and we'll talk about tassels. So for the fringe or tassels, we're going to attach them to the scarf to the right side. So this is the right side, and the left side of the scarf, with the right side of the front of your work facing up. So if you've just finished with the wrong side, you're going to flip the scarf over, and that's where you'll attach the fringe or tassels. I have a whole video dedicated to how to cut these strands, how to attach them to your project, and how to trim the ends so that they're perfectly straight. And I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. I wanted to mention a few things regarding the fringe and tassels that are specific to this scarf. So each tassel is in the middle of 2 rows. That's how they are spaced out. And I think that creates a really even, nice spacing for these tassels or fringe. Each tassel has 2 strands of yarn, but then once they're attached, it creates a tassel with 4 strands of yarn, but they're all made with 2 strands each. And the strands of yarn before they are attached are 10 inches long. So when you're watching that video and reading the guide that I have on how to cut the tassels and attach them and trim them, know that you're going to be wanting to make tassels that are 10 inches long, or having strands that are 10 inches long, and then you'll trim them after they are attached, and I cut mine to be approximately 3.5 inches long. That's how long these are. So you go ahead, watch that video on how to make the tassels and attach them. And that concludes this pattern. I really hope you enjoy this scarf, and I hope you enjoyed making it. This is just one of my absolute favorite, coziest patterns, and I think it makes a wonderful gift or for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.